Tonight's Coaches Show with Franklin Regional Coach Greg Botta is presented by the Ground Round near the Westmoreland Mall in Greensburg. Whether it's specialty burgers and sandwiches, one-of-a-kind fajitas, or one of their homemade dinners, we've got what you like at the Ground Round.
It is Friday evening, and the Franklin Regional Panthers are home tonight, coming off of a thrilling last-second victory last Friday at Mars, 21-15. And as we always do, we visit with head coach Greg Botta prior to every Panthers football game, and tonight is our first live video broadcast of the season involving the Panthers. And Coach Botta, before we talk about a couple of things necessarily not involving your team, let's go back to last Friday night. I described that on the pregame as one of the marquee matchups every year in the Greater Allegheny Conference. I think it's probably the best matchup every year because of the success of your program and Coach Heidenauer's group. And I said it would be a four-quarter knuckle buster. I think it lived up to that. What do you think?
Well, I agree. As we spoke before the game last Friday, you thought it would be a four-quarter game, and I did too. I mean, traditionally those games are down to the wire. We lost a heartbreaker one time when Churn was a junior. Churnsing was a junior, and that's the way these games are played. Both teams fought hard, great programs, and very, very tough physical kids. And I'm sure the crowd got their money's worth, and it was 48 minutes of football.
Oh, it certainly was. And if you missed it, certainly go back to our archive at westmorelandsports.com and take a listen sometime. Coach, looking at some of the numbers last week, your running game was pretty productive for you. You did not have close to 10 yards like you had the game before, but you still averaged almost 5 yards a carry. So how did you think your running game carried itself last week in that win?
Well, you look at Mars' defense, very, very big physical kids, and we knew we'd have a tough time moving the ball against them, but we found a couple plays at work. We ran inside zone probably about 20-some times. We got great movement from my center, Jake Pickup, our two guards, Miderator, Bazone, and on the other side, Nate Moore. And then we just did a real good job doubling their down guys to the next level. Got 3 to 4 yards of push, and you get 4 yards of push, you get a first down. And we moved the ball down the field and scored in our first drive by running a lot of inside zone. So I was real proud of the kids on how they performed.
Now, Jake Pickup was starting last week because your freshman starting center this year, Bryce Lauer, was a bit nicked up. You had to be pretty pleased. Is that the first time Jake's been the center in a varsity game?
Well, Jake has taken reps there throughout the season, but usually he's my guard, and that's where he played last year as a sophomore. He's not a big kid as far as height, but he has a huge heart and plays a physical football game. And he was going against that big number 77 Robinson at 380, and it was fun watching him. We had fun on Saturday watching film and seeing how Jake was fighting, and that's what he is. He's a fighter, and he was a perfect person for that, and he frustrated the heck out of him.
Your junior quarterback, Santino Birdie, I think he's getting better and better each week. Last week he led the team in rushing with 69 yards, and he was 4-10 passing and added another 40 through the air. How would you describe his development?
He's a competitor, number one, and it was a tough call between him and Andrew Brinzik, quarterback, and we just thought there was a little bit more upside with Santino. But we know Andrew's ready to come in too. But, you need reps, you need practice, you need to see the game at a top speed. And for Santino, he's getting the time he needs, and I think he's improving every single game. We run the read zone as well as everybody knows, and he continually has to get better at his reads. I know he made some bad reads last week, but overall he did a really, really good job. And, he throws the ball with consistency. We don't want to turn the ball over with picks, and he didn't do that last week, and that was a very big plus for us that he didn't throw an interception. But he's a runner at quarterback, and he's a physical kid, so he adds a nice element to what we do offensively.
Jake Lauer came out like he was shot out of a cannon in that first quarter last week up there, making impact plays. You got to be pleased. He's starting to step up and be a big-time contributor.
Well, that's what it is. He was a sophomore starter last year. He had to bide his time and learn about the game, and now he's a junior, bigger and stronger, and next year he's going to be a force on the field. But he played the type of football game that we know he's capable of playing, and we need more of that from him. He's going both ways. He started cramping up a little bit towards the end, but he pushed through it, and he's going to be a contributor all through the year.
Charlie Maison put the heat on, 2 big sacks, and that last one he got was very, very big. The young man plays both ways on your line, and to me, I guess the word dependable doesn't quite strongly describe what he means to the Panthers.
No, there's key players on every football team, both on the offensive side and defensive side. And Charlie's our anchor on offense. He fights hard on the offensive line at right tackle. But, he's a great defensive ball player, too, and I can't say enough about him on how his motor never stops. I mean, he goes both ways. We have about 3 or 4 guys who go both ways consistently, and he's one of them. And he's one that can't come off the football field. We try to give him a blow here and there, but he wants to be out there. And I can't say enough about his accomplishments and what he has meant to this football team. And it's nice to have him back next year also, because he's just a junior. And, he put on some strong weight last year, and he's a wrestler. And I love the wrestlers playing ball. And I can't say enough about him. And I just hope, he continues to stay healthy and gets better week after week.
Brett Zanato, the University of Maryland recruit, another 3-touchdown effort last week. But what stood out to me looking at the statistics was leading the team in tackles with 9 solo tackles, and he really means so much to you, not just on offense.
Yeah, he does. And not only is he our physical leader on the field, Jonathan, he's also our emotional leader. And when he's out there, there's a whole different attitude. There's this, this attitude that we're gonna stand behind and run behind and play behind a champion. And he is, and he wants to be out there. He had a shoulder tweak a couple weeks ago. He just ran offense last week against Hollidaysburg, kept him very, very healthy. And, he was fresh, and I think that's one reason he ran so well. He went both sides of the ball. And, he got his carries on the offensive running back position. But on defense, he means the world to us. And, I'm glad that he's playing on my team. Let me tell you that.
Tonight, the Panthers go against an Indiana team, also identical record, 2 wins, 1 loss, both in the conference and overall. And you and I were talking, the quarterback, the coach's son, Jacob Zelinkas, back in week 1 against Mars when they were trailing 19-0 after Schulteis's injury, he just took over the game. And you were telling me the Stapleton brothers, Dylan 6'4", Riley 6'5", you're a little bit concerned about their passing attack.
Well, first of all, I can't say enough about their head football coach, Mark Slins, because he's a number one, a good friend of mine, and hope he wins every game but one. And he's gone through a lot of things physically, and I think his team is rallying behind him. He's a great guy, great leader, a heck of a football coach. And he only has about 38 kids on his football team, but their kids are all players. And he told me that this summer, that the kids I have are all football players. I don't have one kid that I wouldn't be afraid to put out there. That being said, I mean, his son is he is Brett on their side, plays defensive outside linebackers, quarterback, and then he's their quarterback, and he runs the ball, throws the ball, runs the option. He is a big threat. We got to know where he is. They run that triple option, which always presents a problem. You got to be very disciplined on the defensive side. And now what they have is an offense that can throw the ball. And he has 2 tremendous receivers in both the Stapleton brothers. And it's going to be a tough football game, and we got to be ready for it. So, we put a couple things in, hopefully to slow them down. It's going to be tough to stop them. But like you said, you look at the first game, the game with Mars. It was the first Steeler game. Mars dominated the first half, scored the first 19 points, and then, Young Zeliskins took over. Yeah. He took over the football game. And that being said, they came back and won it 29-26 in a heck of a game.
Now, you are concerned, not too many teams you go against have 2 receivers that are 6'4", and 1 6'5". Your defensive backs are not exactly the length of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. How are some of your thoughts about trying to control the outside receivers?
Well, we're making some moves defensively. We're gonna move some people around to give us a little bit more height at those positions. But let me tell you, Jake Ross is a tremendous corner. He is an athlete, and he's outmatched height-wise, but he's not going to be outmatched by the heart. We're going to throw some wrinkles in there, a couple new schemes too, to hopefully confuse young Zelinskis because it's all timing patterns. We got to get into him. We got to make sure he throws the ball off time. If we give him his 3 seconds to throw the ball, they're going to complete it, and especially when you get a guy who has a reach that's maybe 9-foot reach when you take his arm length in their count. So, we're going to work hard. We're going to do a lot of things defensively this week, spend a lot more time on defense, and hopefully slow these guys down.
I got to ask you about that last drive there. Your punter had dropped it inside the 5-yard line. I believe it was the 3. Santino. And Coach Heinauer with his wing T, seemed to come up with a fast-paced 2-minute attack. And before we know it, and it was about 2 minutes and change, as I recall.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, pretty good shape. They got to go 97 yards. But the next thing I know, they're completing passes and running after the catch. And before you can catch your breath, we're down to the final 20 or so seconds. And then the pass that, speaking of Jacob, it was Jacob Ross, when it get high. And you said that was one of the key moments, obviously, of the game. And talking to one of your players on our postgame show, they credited how well Jacob high pointed that interception against a taller guy. And you took a breath then, didn't you?
I took a big breath. And it's funny because a lot of the leaders out in that football field, Nate Fleck, who we don't talk enough about, he's a great football player on both sides of the ball. Him and Zanata, they kept telling the defensive backs, calm down, we're okay. And, we weren't putting pressure on him. And he had a lot of time to throw the football. And they do a nice scramble drill. Scramble, a lot of times the timing was off. They scrambled. He was right on target throwing the ball. And then at the end, when we needed it, Coach Cortazzo put some pressure on. That's when Maison came up with a hurry, and he threw the ball off his back foot and threw it up in the air, and that's what we needed, and Jake pulled it on.
Coach Botta, that's a difficult situation. I want to ask you a follow-up on that. When you're playing late in the game and you've got a less than, as you did, a 6-point lead where a touchdown and the extra point would have brought them to a stirring comeback, what is your thought about playing that prevent defense where you don't pressure?
Well, that's where we have some difference of agreement.
Okay.
It seems like you want to be able to give up some yardage. You want to keep them in bounds. You want to keep the clock running. There's a lot of strategy behind it, but yet you don't want to give them all the time in the world. And I think a change up at time to keep them off balance, keep their offensive line off balance is needed. I think it's something we got to take a better look at. And I understand where you're coming from. And we just got to do what's best during that situation. And there's times that the prevent is good, and there's other times that there's teams that can pick it apart. And if they got a running back too, they had a couple running plays and took the ball out of bounds, stopped the clock. Yep. So I think they had one timeout left when they began that drive. And I can't give Scott enough credit for what he did because, I would have probably bet my house that they weren't going to move the ball that well, and they did. So, we just got to take a better look at that prevent.
Yesterday, a high school football coach at Carleton resigned. From what I was told yesterday evening by a couple coaches from a conference team that's in their section, he just contacted his athletic director and said he was resigning, and it found out today due to safety reasons. He's down to 22 players. What's your opinion on a coach that in the middle of the season, really not even halfway through, decides that he's not going to coach a team anymore?
That's a tough one. High school football numbers are dropping everywhere. We're one of the few schools that still have a ninth grade program, and we had the low 20s. We're in the mid 50s, and you hate to see that happen to anyone. It's a difficult game. Less and less kids are playing it. I understand his concern. We're going through a number of injuries too this year, and we're lucky enough to have other kids step it up. But, my thought is there's ways to go about to handle that, and leaving the team. I know he's making his point, and he's trying to make it known that there's safety issues here, but there's probably other ways you can handle that rather than just walking out on your players. What's that tell the players? When things get tough, you quit. And that's one of the things I love about this game that teaches you life's lessons, and that's a lesson I probably wouldn't want to teach somebody that, let's go to the right people, find out what's going on, and maybe – game after game, talk to some of the coach from the other team. Let's cut the number of minutes down. Let's get the running clock or something. But just to walk out on your team, and especially if they're going to continue playing, what's that tell your kids? That we're hanging in here, but you're leaving. But I understand his concern, but probably a better way to do it.
Coach, one final question. Keys for a victory tonight on the turf against these Indiana Indians, because this is a big game. You're tied with 3 teams with 2-1 records, and right now Hampton sitting pretty at the top, unblemished, and of course Knock 2-0 in the conference, but they lost their non-conference game last Friday.
Well, what we have to do is, number one, is be disciplined on offense. They run that triple option. We got to make sure we have our responsibilities and we take care of the dive, the pitch, and the quarterback. Disrupt Zelinskis' timing and throwing, and hold their passing game down. We're not going to stop it, but just slow it down, hold it down. On the offensive side, we got to keep our drives going. All right, we had slowed down our penalties production last week, and we got to try to do better at that. and make our drives consistent with scores. I mean, we blocked a punt last week and turned into 0 points. We cannot let that happen in crucial football games. If someone said we had an opportunity to block a punt and go in and score, we didn't do it, I would have thought our chance would have been poor against Mars. So we got to take advantage of opportunities when they come up.
Coach, best of luck as he goes for another win with those Panthers here at Panther Stadium. Thanks for the visit.
All right. Thank you, John.
That's head coach Greg Botta. We'll be back with more of our pregame show from Panther Stadium as tonight in Week 4, the Panthers entertain Indiana. You are watching Franklin Regional Panthers football live on the Westmoreland Sports Network.